I want to show you what you can do with the general API that you can't do with the bot API, what's capable with a regular client that's not capable with a simple bot. What I found in investigating the Telegram API is, in general, the bot is quite limited in its ability to participate in group chats. And if you think about how you might use Telegram as, say, a business tool, one of the things you might do is you might say, okay, we'll create a group. We'll use it very similar to Slack. We'll create a group, and in that group, we'll discuss a particular topic. And then when a certain message comes up or when a certain event happens, when somebody pushes to a Git repository, we'll automatically post a message. Well, you can do that with the bot API, but maybe when somebody asks about something, the bot can monitor that and then respond automatically. Well, that monitoring is a lot harder to do with the bot API than it is to do with the regular client API. And doing things like adding and removing users from these groups is also not possible to do with the bot API. So I'll show you our other option, which is the standard API. Now, in order to show that to you, I'll switch over to this group here that I've created. And in this group, I've invited the bot itself. What we'll do is we'll create the same client as before. First, we'll get our imports. So we'll create a client here, and we'll actually log in as ourselves. So we'll give this our phone number, and we'll give this our two-factor authentication password. And in just a moment, it's going to send us a code so that we can actually log in. We'll put in that code. Thankfully, it is a one-time use code. So there we go. And now we have a client that actually represents our own logged in instance. One of the things about Telegram is, unlike a lot of other services, the Telegram creators are actually fairly open about allowing you to create your own interfaces for Telegram. They're not limiting you just to the official clients. And so if there were something that you wanted to do to create something that was like, a better version of the Telegram desktop client or the Telegram mobile client, or if you wanted to take certain workflows that you have and to automate them in some fashion, well, this is the approach that you might take. And they're very open to this. Well, here, I can actually make use of some of the API calls that I was forbidden to use when I was using the bot API. So if I do something like iter dialogs, it will actually work. So what we'll do is we'll iterate through all of the open dialogues, and we'll look for one where the name is equal to test. And hopefully, that should pick up this dialog here. So you can see if we do that, this gives us all our dialogues. And if we're lucky, this thing right here, this entity right here actually represents the chat you can see behind me. So we'll ask this thing for its entity. We'll ask this thing for its title. There we go. Let's see if we can change the title of this. So we'll manage this group. And let's see what happens when we ask it for its title again. One thing that we need to be aware of whenever we're working with these APIs is where that implicit caching is happening. I mentioned that you can see from the timing of these API calls that when I run it the first time, it's slow. When I run it the second time, it's fast. There's some implicit caching behind the scenes. Well, here, this is why that's relevant. I updated the title of the chat, but from the perspective of my API calls here, it doesn't update until I query again for the dialog. So let's look for anywhere where test is in x.name. And that should give us that dialog again. So I'll have to re-query that in order to get that information. So what you can see here is from the Telethon API's perspective, it doesn't have behind the scenes callbacks on every one of the objects that it gives you that are automatically updating these. You're actually responsible for querying these and for figuring out when you want to take those updates. And of course, if this were a group which had chat messages or pin messages changing on a very frequent basis, then you might need to have a little bit more complexity than just query first and then make use of this object. There's no transparent updates happening. That said, as you probably know, if you've ever managed the group, there are rate limits on things like changing the details of a group. And so that does give you a certain upper bound on how often you have to query for updates, since you can't update this thing more frequently than the underlying rate limit. Well, here, if I ask this dialogs for its entity, this gives me the channel. Let's see if I can send a message to this channel. So I'll do a send message to the channel, and we'll see what happens. Now, of course, I need to await that as well. And what we can see behind the scenes is I'm able to send messages to this channel. What I can also do that I can't easily do with the bot API is I can see who's in that channel. So if I take a look at the dir on my client object, I can see all the other methods that are here. Kick participant, well, I could kick the bot out of this channel. Let's see what happens when I do that. Kick participant. Let's do a quick help on this. Just see all the things. You can see there's the entity and the user. So I should be able to kick participant. We'll give it the channel, and we'll say our user is our DUTC bot. We'll await this, and we'll see did it manage to remove this participant. And if we take a look at the participants who are in this channel, you can see that participant was removed. Let's see if we can add that bot once more. We'll do that behind the scenes. So we can actually easily add and remove bots or add and remove users from these channels using this API. And we can't do that easily with a bot. So you could think that if it were the case that you wanted to, for example, make use of these channels for automatically adding users, maybe if you have some sort of customer service system, and when something comes into your Zendesk, you've created a channel that is in response to that one particular customer service incident, and you want to invite people and remove people. Well, unfortunately, you can't do that with the bot. You need one of these synthetic users. You need an actual user account in order to do things like that. Other things like, for example, changing the title of the channel, well, that's also going to be a little bit difficult to do as well. You can't do it with the bot API. You're going to have to do it with the normal client API. And I'll show you a case where Telethon provides you with conveniences for doing common actions, but it doesn't preclude you from doing everything that's possible in Telegram API, and the Telegram API actually has quite a few things. In addition to the methods that you can see on this client object, for example, iterating over all the administrative operations that are happening, or all the downloads that you have, or all the draft messages that you have, or all the messages that you've ever received, one thing that you can do with the regular API that you can't do with the bot API is iterate over all the messages and all of the channels that you can see, which of course you can think that if you're creating a parallel client, you'd have to do in order to populate, the windows of all of these, all of the chats that are open. Well, in addition to all of these specific methods, if we go into the Telethon library, so I think telethon tl.functions, or that, we can actually see functions corresponding to things that could be done directly via the MT-Proto API. And here you can see the grouping of these authentication account actions. For example, if we do functions.account, we can actually do things like update our profile message, update our profile image, update our name, update our phone number, and things like that, even update our password. This is effectively everything that you need in order to create a Telegram client. So anything you can do via the standard Telegram client, the standard open source Telegram client, you can do via this API. Well, let's say we want to do something like change the channel title. So we'll take a look at what's in functions.channels, and we'll have to scroll through this. If we scroll closer to the top, we can see there is a request here for each one of these. What we're going to do is we're going to request a change to this channel. You can see request deleting the channel, creating the channel. Let's see, what we want is we can invite people to the channel, And what we want is this edit title request. So let's see if we can pull that out. Edit title request. Do a help on that just to see what methods it takes or what additional information it takes. It takes this first argument, which channel to do this on, as well as the new title. For that first argument, I believe we want to give it the actual channel that we have. So let's see, do we have that active there? So let's do functions, channels, edit title request. Go to channel, and we'll give it the new title. And this will create a request object, which will actually use the client as a callable to invoke. So that's a little bit strange that you have this client object that you have methods on, but it itself is also callable. And when you call this thing, you invoke these different requests. But if we go back to our channel, we should see, did this actually manage to change the title? Surprisingly enough, it did. You can see at the bottom of this, it changed the group name to new title. Why it didn't update at the top of this client? Well, you can see there was a little bit of delay in that update. You can see this Telegram client here actually isn't processing updates live or real time, but it did manage to update it, even though it took a moment for that to be visible. So we can do